Good afternoon, collectors and friends. Thank you so much for joining me today, the doctor, your host of Trading Card Therapy, episode number 78. We have an excellent episode prepared for you. And if you have not had a chance to watch the last few episodes, I encourage you to do so. We've had some incredible guests, including my friend Larry, as well as Justin with an amazing vintage hockey card collection. Those are the last few episodes, and you can either find those on my Just Collect YouTube channel, all one word, Just Collect, under the Trading Card Therapy episodes. You can also find it wherever you enjoy your favorite podcast, like on Apple or Spotify, in those type places. So today we have another guest, which is also someone who is a member of our Vintage Breaks community. We're going to get into that in just a few minutes. I wanted to talk briefly about my experience last weekend down at the Philly Card Show. And if you haven't been yet, it is a fantastic show. It takes place very close to the King of Prussia Mall. And if you have never been, I encourage you to go to the next one upcoming in December. You can find out all of the information at thephillyshow.com. What made this particular show special for me was that my son Crosby was there with me the entire time. And even though he's been to this convention a couple of times with me before, it seems as though something clicked for him this time. But not just, being there with his dad, but there was also, I think he's starting to understand not just the value of money, but also, hey, in order to earn money, I might have to work or do tasks. And so one of those things that he was able to do to quote unquote earn money at the convention was to just simply say hello to our customers. And that became much more interesting when I kind of gamified it. And I said, all right, well, you're going to get paid, literally it was $15 per day, at the convention. Picked him up from school when it ended on Friday. And I said, all right, for every card we sell in the booth, I'm going to give you X amount of dollars, not thinking it would really add up to too much. But what it really did was it kind of accelerated him talking to folks, because he didn't just say hi. I was trying to explain to him, saying, maybe ask them if they're looking for something, if there's something you can help them with. And so that really kind of culminated in a wonderful experience for him, kind of like behind the table. And, as far as, walking around the show itself, I, of course, had a good time. I didn't know if my son was going to enjoy it or not. He spent a lot of time behind the booth because that's where he could earn more money by, selling more cards. But he was looking for one-piece cards. And, one of the things, I'd been thinking about going into, this particular convention, but also in general is, kind of like, where have the collectors gone, or where did all the collectors go? What I mean is, it seems like a lot of people these days, or many people are, very into, hey, I got a good deal on this, even if it's for my PC. It's kind of like, it's what you hear. Right. And so, what I thought would be, cool is to kind of see it from my son's perspective, say, all right, like, I don't know much about one-piece cards, but let's walk around and let's kind of see how he embraces collecting and what happens. And so what I wanted to talk about today, before I bring on Todd in just a minute, is really share with you just a wonderful experience that happened for my son and myself at the convention. And so he watches this show, One Piece, fairly often. He likes it a lot. We've watched it together, the live action portion of that show. And so looking around the convention, there was not a lot of one-piece cards, certainly wasn't a lot of one-piece packs and wax. And he quickly discovered that, for the cards and the packs that were there, they were a little bit pricey, and they also weren't selling them by the pack. They were selling whole boxes. And we saw someone that Crosby's met before. Her name is Sharon. She runs a company called Black Jade Wolf. She's a wonderful person and always takes interest in my son, and particularly they both like One Piece. So it's really cool. Anyway, we had asked Sharon if she had any one-piece cards, if she had any boxes. And she said she did not. And unfortunately, she didn't really bring her singles with us, with her to the show. But, Crosby still had a nice time talking with her for a minute or two. And so we kind of went on our way. And so if you fast forward, I think, to the next day, Crosby was very adamant that he wanted to try to take, some of his money and try to find some one-piece cards. But he saw that they were quite difficult to find. And the ones that we did find, like I said, the boxes were expensive and there really wasn't very many singles. So what happened was we stumbled across my friend Steve Dickler. He's someone who deals in wax. And Steve deals with vintage wax and modern wax. And he had told me, I think the price, I don't remember exactly. It was about $100, $105, something like that for the one-piece box. And, for us to spend that kind of money on a single box of cards for my son is a lot. He doesn't want to spend his own money on that. I'm not sure his dad does either. But, I certainly was willing to entertain something, but they weren't selling any packs. And so, Crosby understood they were expensive, kind of understood that he didn't really want to spend that kind of money on it. And we just started to look around a little bit further. And I'm not exactly sure when it happened, but I went back to Steve's booth at some point later, and I was with Cros, and maybe it's Crosby's cuteness, but Steve says to me, and by the way, we didn't ask him for a discount. We didn't ask him for anything. But keep in mind, I've known Steve for several decades, done a lot of business with him, and was just so kind. He recognized how much my son wanted it and said, well, Leighton, if you guys would like a box of one-piece cards, to open, if your son would like one, I would sell it to you for my cost. Keep in mind, I had no idea what his cost was. I thought it could have been $1 less. I really didn't know. And, I certainly don't want to discuss someone's costs in business on air. But when he told us the price, it made sense for us that it was a lot cheaper. And even though he couldn't rip open the box and sell us the packs, it was at a point where basically Crosby realized it was a good deal. And what I tried to explain to him was that, not everyone's going to offer you this same kind of deal. And I think it'll be worth it. Now, of course, I told him later, I'm kind of a sucker, that I would pay for it. He works so hard and he can use his money for other stuff and save some of it. But anyway, I'm a big softie. I'm sure many of you out there are for your own kids as well. So including my guest coming up in just a few minutes. But this is where the story starts to get good. So, I'm trying real hard to teach my son what I believe is valuable lessons, not about collecting, but about life. And so as we thanked Steve profusely, we walked away. He's very excited. And now he wants to maybe open up some of the packs and even grade some of the cards, I heard him say, which is really, exciting for me to hear. So I explained to Crosby that, Steve did this because he was trying to be nice to you, but he also was doing this because he recognized how much you wanted it and that you're a young boy and that he just wanted to do something to kind of make a friend of his sons happy. And I said, we should be grateful for that and that there's a lot of packs in the box. And so he looked at me a little bit strangely because he could kind of figure out what might be coming next. And I said, well, do you remember Sharon, who we saw earlier? She doesn't have any cards. Now, keep in mind, Sharon and her business, she's doing great. I'm sure she can afford her own one-piece cards, but that wasn't the point. The point is that someone was generous to us, to my son in particular, and gave us a deal that really we couldn't get anywhere else. And so I thought that maybe we should, we've been working on sharing. It's not the easiest. Crosby doesn't have any brothers or sisters. But I wanted to try to take a lesson from this and take the generosity from one person, maybe spread that around. And so we didn't really know that many people who were into one piece of the show, but we do know that Sharon really liked it. And something magical happened. He not only agreed that we should give Sharon a pack, but when we went over to Sharon's booth, I think at this point, it might have been late Saturday or Sunday morning. I don't quite remember. We take it over to Sharon and she catches on pretty quickly what we're doing and what I'm trying to do with my son. And she was very warm and receptive and, of course, very gracious and excited to get this pack. And then she took a moment to show Crosby a card that she had bought for actually quite a bit of money. It was a PSA 10 one-piece card. I think it was like a case hit of something. And so what was beautiful in that moment is that I saw the love of collecting right in front of me. And it had nothing to do with sports. But Sharon, I think she kind of paused what she was doing. She put everything off to the side. Not that she was being bum rushed at her booth, but she was 110% engaged with my son. She's showing him. Now, Crosby is very smart boy, and he knows One Piece very well. So he's looking at this card. Remember, he doesn't care about the price. He does understand what a 10 grade is, but he doesn't know what a 10 card is. And so anyway, they're admiring the art together. And all it is just two collectors, obviously on opposite ends of the financial spectrum, but two collectors who appreciate the same subject. And Crosby's literally pointing out to Sharon, oh, I can see this in the art on the card. And then Sharon's agreeing, and you can see them just both smiling, with very big, wide smiles. And if my, video guy is doing his job, he's going to put up one of these pictures from the convention so you guys can see. And then Sharon's talking to him about One Piece in general, and she's really taking the time, and he's just so engaged. And so for me to be able to see the love of collecting, and I know it's not sports or even something I necessarily understand, but I do understand love. And even though I love my son a ton, I know love when I see it. And those are two people, Sharon and my son Crosby, that absolutely love and have a lot of passion for One Piece. And how can I not support that as a parent? So that to me was absolutely the highlight of my convention, of just seeing that interaction. Thank you, Steve, so much. Sharon, thank you from the bottom of my heart, as well as Crosby's, for taking the time to interact. I know we have Todd waiting in the wings there, so we're going to try to wrap up. I wanted to give a shout out to a few people I saw in person at Philly, like Rob, like Daniel, like Joe, like my buddy Carlo, like Stan, like Kevin, like Dan, and Dan is my neighbor there. Really looking forward to the December holiday Philly show. If you want to get details on it, check out thephillyshow.com. Very quickly wanted to show you two of my highlights from the show. The first one is a card from my PC. This was one of my favorite Michael Jordan inserts growing up. And at the price of just $215, I was able to buy a PSA 9. And I think a 10 would set you back a pretty penny. There was no 10s at the show. This card to me is just a great fit for my collection and the budget. So if you are out there and you dig 90s Michael Jordans, let me know in the chat, what is your favorite 1990s Michael Jordan insert? And if you don't have one, what are you looking for as far as Michael Jordan for your next MJ purchase for your PC? And I bought many cards of the show, but the two I had to show off today, I only bought one Ruth Gowdy, but I bought this because I thought it was a fair price. And I really do like the red Ruth. You can see, of course, creasing very evidently across the middle, but I like that it does not go into his face. I also like that it is a complete card, no missing corners. It's clean, no major staining of any kind, white borders. And so I thought for a 1.5, although fairly graded, I thought that was a clean example. But I'm curious in your thoughts. If you're looking for a Gowdy Ruth, are you only going to buy one that's dead nut centered or has no creasing? Because I know that, everyone kind of has their own different attributes that they have as far as having requirements for a card. So those are my two, cards I wanted to show off today on Trading Card Therapy. Okay. So I'm about to bring on Todd. Todd, can you hear me okay?
I can.
Great. So thank you for your patience. I appreciate it. Went a little bit further than I thought, but as we're talking about our respective kids, you can appreciate that we tend to go on and on, So Todd, thank you so much for joining us today on Trading Card Therapy. Oh, listen, it's our pleasure. Even though we know each other now at this point fairly well, keep in mind that, we're taping the episode and we want folks who are going to be watching this and enjoying it, who may not know you or I, a little bit about yourself, your background, and you don't necessarily have to give your entire professional history, but a little bit about what you do, professionally, and then also kind of like what you're into, as far as in the space.
Well, professionally, I'm retired, so it's good to be retired. I was in the sporting industry as a professional athlete, and then in the sports industry for right up until just a couple years ago. Been collecting since I was a little kid, and found out cards were worth money when I was very young age when I was at my brother's baseball game at a local stadium, and happened to see a George Brett rookie card worth $8 or selling for $8. So that kind of got me early on, and the rest you can say is history. I don't spend so much time with cards anymore. I do enjoy them going for the vintage, which thanks to you has certainly built most of my vintage and pre-war cards are from you. And I kind of am starting to get into the memorabilia. So more of game used equipment and bats, balls, and what have you.
I like game used equipment as well. I think it's come a long way, Todd, especially with photo matching. I think it's going to go a long way to revolutionize the industry, and then also to bring a lot more comfortability to buyers like you and myself and other collectors, because I feel like that's been one of the hangups in recent years as to that sector of our industry or our hobby kind of taking that next step. Is how do you actually know a particular item is game used, and then what game is it from, kind of so on and so forth. How do you feel about photo matching and game used equipment?
Certainly gives you a little more sense of authenticity when you have professionals that specialize in that matching, almost like a type of grading, where grading is kind of, grading's still not perfect, but it does help you steer you in the right direction and gives you an idea of what you're looking at. And, as usual, you would always do your own homework and due diligence on what you're looking at and potentially buying. So I think that's an extra added protection, and hopefully we'll see more companies and experts out there that will be helping identify game used equipment.
I agree with you. Something that you just touched upon, Todd, that I thought was interesting, and I think it's a really wonderful way to look at grading, is that grading, at the moment at least, is not done by AI. It's not done with computers for the most part, that I know of. It's done with humans, and it is done with guidelines depending on which company you use. They do have different guidelines. But I think you had a wonderful way to describe grading, at least as far as cards go. It's really just a guide. And I think it's a helpful guide. But I know, for example, I just had some cards on my desk that I was looking at a 1968 Topps Mickey Mantle at PSA 6, and it was wickedly off-centered. Now, is it still technically a 6? Absolutely. But I guess my question for you is, and for a lot of the collectors out there that might be watching this, I think we're getting to a place of maturity in the hobby, which I think is wonderful, where that 6 that's wickedly off-centered still has a space and it's still worth X amount of dollars. But you and I might actually prefer a 4 or a 5 that just happens to be well-centered. And so I'm curious, have you ever in your own mind said, all right, if I was looking at a 6 of a card I was desiring, so in this case, we'll just talk about a 68 Topps Mickey Mantle, because I haven't thought about this, but it'd be fun to just discuss off the cuff here. Have you thought about, all right, if I wanted that card in a 6, but I can only find ones that are really off-centered and I don't think it's cheap enough for me to buy those, what grade would you accept less than that 6 if it was very well centered on that same card you were hoping for to buy for your collection?
Well, it's not so much the grade. It's about the eye appeal for me and what I was looking for. And due to some recent things that have happened in my life, I have a little bit more ways to a little more money to spend on stuff like that. Whereas when I was younger, it's, you buy what's best for your budget and what you're looking for. And so grading wasn't necessarily a particular grade wasn't necessarily important, especially on the vintage and pre-war. Obviously modern, you really want a 9 or a 10 for the most part, in most cases, unless it's a rare card, which I'm a Derek Jeter collector. So I accept a lot of lower grades just because I'm trying to get all of them slabbed. And, sometimes you're limited as what you have, especially with the low number of print runs that you get and the amount of parallels that you just need to be happy with what you get, whether it's a 10 or a 5. And, if there's only 10 cards out there, you might only have one shot at one card. So you take the grade that you can get if you have the card already, or, you may not see that card pop up again. So you grab the one that's available, whatever grade it is in at that time.
That makes a lot of sense. And it's really nice and refreshing, Todd, 'cause I know you're a true collector, but I made a note, and you're right. I've seen you in action, but also for myself, just being at the Philly show this weekend, folks are asking me, what are you looking for? They see this discerning eye going to their booth, Todd. I'm studying their stuff. I look kind of like a robot, and they're like, what are you looking for? And to be fair, there's just a few certain names I'm looking for, but really what I'm looking for is a great looking card. And this might sound weird coming from someone who's also a dealer, meaning myself, but I'm also a collector. And sometimes when I get to a card, and it happened this weekend at the show, I'm going to play a Guess That Grade on my IG account and my YouTube account, but I was able to buy a T206. Todd, you'll appreciate this. I don't have it here to show you, but I'll text you before I show it online. It stopped me in my tracks. It had such a great, wonderful look, as if it just came out yesterday. Now, it was not an 8 or 9, but it had that look. And I think that's what you're referring to. And I think that's really wonderful if you can get to that place in your collecting journey where almost test yourself. I would encourage you to do this. Next time you go to a convention, I know the grades of the cards are in the upper right in almost every card, but really try to focus on the card itself. You'll be amazed what happens. You might start looking at, if you're looking for a Pete Rose rookie, you might look for a Rose rookie that's really well centered, and that card notoriously is not easy to find centered. I mean, I can tell you firsthand, if you had a Rose rookie that had a crease but was well centered with good color, and it was a 3, I would absolutely take that over a badly off-centered 6. Even though it's technically a more valuable, i.e., I guess, a desirable card. And I think that's what's interesting. I guess we just figured out, Todd. I don't think in our hobby, a more valuable card means it's more desirable. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what transpired with us at the National is kind of a good example of that. I went in there with certain goals in mind, and I stuck to some of those goals, and I called an audible after stopping at your booth. And, something that caught my eye is certainly something I certainly didn't expect to be shopping for or expect to have in my possession now. So, and it's something that you really need to do, especially in this day and age with so many things out there, is you really need to hone in on what you're truly collecting and what you're truly trying to accomplish. And, I've gotten better at that recently, and my first National, and I stuck to my guns and just called the one audible, and it turned out good. And what, I ended up parting with is something that's replaceable. What I got out of it is something that I'll never have until now, and would never expect to be in my collection until now. So it worked out good, and very excited about it. And certainly my wife gave me the approval for it, along with quite a few other people, as I did my research and didn't just do a spur of the moment thing. I put a lot of thought into it and spoke to a lot of people, both friends and experts, and felt like I was doing the right thing. And the audible ended up being a game scoring touchdown. So,
well, before you show it off, because you gave us a wonderful segue there, Todd, I want to kind of preface this for people who are just listening, right? Because we don't know who's going to watch Todd versus listen to this podcast.
Sure.
But I wanted to try to give some value and some good advice to folks as to why it really benefits you even if you're just going to be seeking advice and counsel from a fellow dealer, keep in mind, I'm also a collector. I tell people I'm a professional treasure hunter, and I am. So Todd, this past national this year was in the Cleveland's Ohio area vicinity. And it just so happened to be that was also the first ever national you had gone to, right?
Correct.
And we could talk literally the entire episode just about that experience, but I'm going to try to spare everyone, you and I, BSing for an hour and try to bring some real value to people. So one of the things I thought that you and I did really well is we corresponded before, and you kind of gave me an idea of what some of your goals were. And the reason why I thought that was important is because I wanted to help you. You know, you've been a wonderful part of our community, been nothing but kind and gracious to not just, you know, myself and my team, but also the rest of the Vintage Breaks community. And, you know, Todd, you don't really ask me for very much, but you said, hey, Leighton, I have some doubles and triplicates, if you will. I'm thinking about doing X, Y, or Z. What do you recommend? And I think, Todd, it all started, I said, you know, even if we don't do business, because remember, we didn't know if we were going to do business. That's what's so interesting about this is you said, you know, wait, we don't know what we're going to do either, meaning yourself and your son, your family with the cards. But hey, you know, you got a lot or most of them from your interaction with our Vintage Breaks, you know, side of things. And so we started off like I would do for many folks is I just said, hey, let me tell you what I think your cards are worth. And when I say the cards, Todd had a fair amount of what I would call, you know, 1950s and 60s high concentration of stars and Hall of Famers. Almost all the cards are graded, you know, multiple Manels, Mays, you know, Aaron, Clemente, Koufax, etc., Frank Robinson, Brooks Robinson, and really in a variety of grades, like literally from 1.5 to like 6, you know, I'm making it up, but like something like that. And to the tune of hundreds of cards. So when Todd brought them to the National, I had explained to you, Todd, that it's going to take me, you know, a little bit of time to do the research. And you said, hey, Leighton, you know, no rush. And you really had made it clear to me, at least in the beginning, before you're audible, that you were intending, and I'm just going to make it up, if you had 3 or 4 or 5 even of a 1956 Topps Mickey Mantle, that you were hoping to maybe take those, kind of trade them in, roll them all together, and maybe get a nicer Mickey Mantle, which, to be fair, made all the sense in the world to me. And so when I went through it, you know, we went over the numbers, and I don't remember exactly. You'd have to obviously describe to the audience the moment it happened, it being you saw it at my table. But I believe, and then I'm going to, you know, kind of pause for a second, Todd, that was your intention. Your intention was to maybe trade this, call it a few hundred cards into not an exact number of cards, but less cards. In other words, leveling up. And, you know, to me, it made a lot of sense. And I guess I want to do, I guess I'd like to pause now because something happened. And you strike me as, and obviously if you've retired, you've done something right in your life. And at the very least, you seem like you went into the National with a plan, but something happened, an audible, you know, took place. But before we talk about exactly what the trade was, I kind of want to talk about what happened for you. Because to me, that's the fun part, right? Like, meaning, Todd, you're already retired. Theoretically, you could save, you could buy, you know, this or that, but something happened and it made it fun. And I wanted to know what it was.
Well, so yeah, you're absolutely correct. I was looking to upgrade everything, and you know, the wife is certainly happy with reducing what I have, which I've been doing for years, and even after well over 1 million cards being donated to reduce, that hasn't made really a dent in what I have. So, you know, that was my goal. I had a spending limit, and really the 2 cards that I wanted to get, one that was my first purchase was from you, was the Mike Schmidt rookie card, and the second was a Dave Winfield rookie card with you know, looking at probably an 8 or a 9, which I was able to find, and right away the Schmidt knocked that off the list with you guys. I think the very first day, maybe it was the second day. But, you know, I've started looking at T206s. I love history. I got a strong tie to the Hall of Fame. So seeing a lot of history is something that I enjoy. And the T206 is what better history is there than the most popular history for cards. So, you know, I everywhere I travel, I try to pick up one, whether it's a card show, which I don't go to that many, or or Cooperstown, I'll buy one at one of the shops there. And certainly I try to get them from you. And, you walk around a place like the National and they're everywhere. So again, you got to weed out what's there. And I tend to, even if I pay a little bit more, if it's someone that I know or trust, I'd rather go to them, give them the business. And I had walked around, and later on that day, we stopped by your booth many times throughout the days and each day just to check in and see how everyone was doing. And a particular T206 caught my attention. There was actually two, and actually J5 actually kind of steered me towards one. And when I really looked at it, I really liked the way it looked, like the centering and the grade. Certainly I felt it. I hate being that person that say it's maybe undergraded, but I almost felt like it was maybe undergraded by maybe half a point or a point, which is what you talked about earlier. So all of a sudden the wheels started turning in my head. Said, gee, I wonder if Leighton would be willing to part with that instead of.
So J5 is to blame for this. And for those that don't know J5, John Paul Maris is our vice president of Just Collect. He's also instrumental in running Vintage Breaks. And it sounds like this trade, which we're going to talk about how it culminated in a minute or two, it sounds like I could have maybe not given up this card if John just would have maybe thrown the win the other way. But the joking aside, Todd, you landed on a beauty. But I also want to make it clear that even though, you may have had the means, you didn't attack it. You were very, as you've been describing to the audience, you talked to everyone. You talked to friends, you talked to experts, you talked to your wife. And you also kind of came in with a different plan. So at what point, even though you're starting to fall in love with this card, at what point did you say, you know what, I might go for it?
I mean, that pretty much happened almost immediately. Talking with my son, he's like, yeah, that's a really cool card. Like, that's crazy. I'm like, well, of course it's crazy. What would mom do? So that was the first question, because you don't want to be in trouble at home.
Sure.
I like where I live.
Sure.
And, I asked a couple other people and who were there, and they were like, yeah, absolutely. That's the way I would go. And of course, then the phone call to the wife happened, and, we talked numbers, and we talked, really what she cared about was the reduction of numbers, which was how many cards I went with and how many cards I'm coming home with. So she kind of said it, and she said, when else would you, she goes, I would never spend that kind of money, but you have this opportunity. She's like, I would go for it. And she's starting to understand as we get older. I actually am sitting in a room that I commandeered from my oldest daughter who moved out. And I actually gave her a good swift kick to make it even happen sooner, because my wife wants me to display what I have. Before kids, I had literally 3 rooms that were gigantic. And, moving into a new home, even though the home was bigger, we had 4 kids. So it's been packed away in a basement, and didn't see much daylight. It's hard to really do that. So in the last month or so, I've been moving into my room. I want to display it. I wouldn't want to disappoint my wife. So, display it will be. So, by reducing, I can get nicer things and display what I have and keep everybody happy. And at the same time, being older, 4 kids, really the 3 girls really don't care, but my son, Ryan, this will be his. He's starting to show some interest, even though he had no interest originally. And so this is almost like an investment, and what better way to invest than something that is on the rare side and higher end that will be easy to sell. I mean, I've had bad experiences on eBay to the point where I stopped, because my wife's like, you can't keep doing this. You're killing yourself, and there's too much dishonesty. So having something like this, I don't got to worry about eBay, because you wouldn't want it on eBay. You go to an auction house. So that's what helps sell me on the idea of, Leighton's gotten me some really nice items over the last few years, and really, other than my 56 cards, everything is from you, and I owe all the vintage and pre-war stuff from you. So to be able to make this happen with you, I was hoping that you would see the value in you, that you can turn around with some of these cards that you once had are now turning around, coming back to you, and they can get passed on to other collectors. Hopefully someone in similar situation like me, that's starting off and trying to build up their vintage collection, and make them happy. And then, like what you always hope to do, you hope to upgrade at some point. So that's what I did here, just kind of a different roundabout way. And it wasn't too long after we made that deal at the National that you were able to come up with a brother for this card, which I'm not even sure if you know that, but he's got a twin brother that
I do. I'm looking forward. We're not going to torture the audience too much longer before you show them off, though. So basically, what Todd was referring to is really like one of the ultimate level ups. So in our industry, in our hobby, which, to be fair, Todd, it may not be unlike other industries. In other words, so if you're in the coins, right, or if you're collecting antiques, like an antique record player, generally people covet the best. So what Todd is trying to say is that over the last several years, he acquired, whether it be from us or in other places, a fair amount of vintage graded stars and Hall of Famers from the 1950s and 60s, but of the major names, Mickey Mantle and Roger Maris and Willie Mays and Hank Aaron and all those wonderful guys. And when he first came to the National, as I just said a few minutes ago, kind of had this one way of going about it, like making it right. But then there's a particular card at my booth, which he had saw and caught his eye. And admittedly, now that I know who to blame for John sending you over to this card, but the joking aside, I really, it's hard to talk like this or get people to feel it or share it, especially if they don't know you. But kind of the way that you're talking about it, Todd, like, I'm being as candid as I possibly can. I didn't really want to trade it, right? It wasn't like I had a sign up on the card, must trade, looking to get out, and everyone's going to see in a minute, like, of course not, Leighton. Why would you want to get rid of this card? So it really happened all super organically, in the sense of and it's funny, I thought we were actually just going to buy your cards at one point. And then John's like, no, he just wants to trade. I'm like, oh my God, Todd, I don't know if you knew about this part of it. I'm like, well, I only have some of the cards he wants. What if I can't upgrade his 67 mantle? Literally, Todd, I'm like saying to John, does he want me to go out and get a 67 mantle and a 7 to upgrade his 3, his 5, and a 6? I'm like, oh my goodness, this is a lot of work. And so I started to become like a little bit nervous, and you're very easy to talk to, but you saw the National. It's very overwhelming. So I really was very happy that we could find some time throughout all the noise to connect. And I didn't want either one of us to feel like it was something was going to happen super fast, because we didn't want that. We could have just brought the cards home with us. Not a big deal.
Sure.
But, you did. You took a few days. I took a few days because it took some time to value the cards. But I just want to make sure I tie it back to the point I said a few minutes ago. Not every dealer is going to do this. And I'm not suggesting I should get some sort of like Scouts badge. What I'm saying is I try to make it as even as possible. But even then, a lot of dealers are just not in the business of taking a whole bunch of stuff, even though it's good, and trading away one diamond, if you will. Usually it's the other way. Hey, I'll trade you all my stuff and you give me a diamond. And we were able to work it out because Todd is incredibly patient as well as generous. And I tried to really show him, I think, all the numbers, how I came up with it. And like I said, I got a little bit taken back when I realized you were serious about doing that trade of that kind of magnitude. But what we're talking about is a trade to the tune of tens of thousands of dollars. And without further ado, Todd, why don't you now show the card that stopped you in your tracks and made you call an audible at the 2024 National Sports Collectors Convention, and show everyone what you did, an incredible level up and a trade with me to acquire?
So again, the colors is what caught my attention, and in the corners. Looking closely at it again, since it doesn't get to see a lot of daylight these days, it stays locked up in the safes. It's the Ty Cobb Bat on Shoulder edition. In a 5.5, so it's hard to see with the reflections.
So try to tilt it just a little bit. There you go. Perfect.
There we go.
That's perfect. Oh, beautiful.
So
well,
yeah,
I'll tell you, I miss it. I miss it very much.
Well, and one of the things I would certainly do is, and Ryan, knowing you now, in the future, we would certainly, if we were ever to part with it, we would certainly offer it to you before anywhere else.
Oh, thank you.
Just for that, for you doing that, because again, I didn't know if you would go for something like that. It just hit me. I'm like, wow, it's a really nice card. It's unfortunately it's not the portrait, which again, if we were talking the same grade in a portrait version, you'd be looking at what, probably 5-6 times more money, probably even in this 7 figures, and
especially for a green in that condition.
Yeah. Which not too long after the National, his brother decided to show up. His twin.
Wow. So yeah, that's great with the no glare. So Todd, I remember that card well. That's an exceptionally good looking one.
Yes. And that was the other thing. And you guys see the front. But one of the things I've gotten good at doing with these is looking at the backs too, because, getting a lot of these now, you start to realize a lot of these were in notebooks and
you see back damage, sure.
Yeah, taped or glued or what have you. So, it's really a good looking card for a one. Like any card, if you start looking at it real closely, you start to see some of those imperfections and what brings it down to a one. But, that quick glance on both of them, they look really, really similar, but as you get closer and closer to the portrait, you start to see those imperfections. But what do you want? Do you want how many people are going to be looking at it that closely? What you want is that eye appeal that isn't going to be 6 inches from your face. So you kind of take that longer distance view. There we go.
Todd, I just realized you said you have 4 kids.
Yes.
So does your wife know that you're in the process of getting 4 more kids? You have 2 of them right there.
Yeah. Well, again, she's starting to realize that there's a lot of value. So she's
Sure.
lightening up a little bit on that. She didn't like it so much, but being high school sweetheart, she knew that I collected a lot when I was younger. But I've also was a big pack rat growing up. When I got a card or a set or a collection, I had to have 3. You always had one to have, one to keep sealed, and a third that, when I open up my card shop someday, I got to sell one. So,
Todd, you and I would have been fast friends. I had to have 2. I never met someone who had to have 3. That's great.
Yeah.
Thinking.
So it's, obviously I've learned that card shops might not be in my best interest, and I don't even really like selling. So, I like the collecting part just to have, and when I collect autographs, if I get multiples, especially if I don't pay for them, with my knowing people now, I get a lot of them that I don't pay for. I would never ever sell it. I would give it to someone, which I've done in many cases to someone before I would sell it, just because I didn't pay for it. That person was generous enough to sign something for me. I would never sell it without them knowing. And that's why I'll probably never sell this stuff, and it'll be up to my kids, mainly my son. But again, if I could reduce it down and have better quality, then that makes it a lot easier and more in demand. And it keeps the wife happy, keeps me happy that I have an investment. And if for some reason I get into a bind, it'll be easier to get rid of. But to really appreciate a friendship like yours, where we were able to work something out, that just makes things better. And walking around the national, I saw and heard a lot of deals going down, and whether it was a little kid or a grown adult, you set yourself apart from everyone else with, them making up numbers and them just like throwing something out like, yeah, I'll do this, or I'll trade you this, or yeah, no interest. But you take a look, you break it down, you explain it, you explain where you're coming from, and I think that's the positive in this. I don't even know if you want to say hobby or business anymore, because it's almost like it's going one way or the other, and there's so much bad stuff happening out there that you want to try to keep it positive, and I think you're one of the positives, and that's not just based on what I see or hear from you. It's what I hear from your team, the explanations that I get from them on certain things. Which I'm not even going to go into it, because I'm going to let you keep doing your thing and making your team talk positive stuff about you and sending out positive vibes. But to hear them say some of the things they say about the way you process things is really shows what a kind of guy you are. And that's why I could have shopped things around and spent a lot of time at the National, but I wanted to give you a shot because I felt like I'd be helping you out to a degree, because you'd have a lot of these cards that you could work back into, you having a couple businesses, you could kind of use the one to acquire them, and then, work it out where you can share these with other people by making money. And you may have had that cob for another hour and someone else could have come and bought it, or you could have had it for another 5 years before someone bought it. But the fact that I was able to somehow finagle it from you.
Well, I know where to go to visit. Todd, I really I appreciate more than you know all the kind words in our relationship. I want to make sure that we cover a couple of the things, because like I said, I could probably keep you here for hours. I know that you mentioned that you have a special relationship with the Hall of Fame. We might even have you back, Todd, if that's okay, in a future episode, because I feel like there's other things we can cover. But I wanted to ask this, and I want to give credit to the team here. This is actually, because almost all these questions are mine, but I want to give a shout out to Sam, who's a member of a Vintage Breaks team. This is a question directly from Sam, but I'm sure everyone would like to know, because you've met a lot of ball players. Out of your experiences you've had directly at the Hall of Fame, or inductions, or just run-ins with ball players, doesn't have to be the coolest, but who is one of the coolest ball players that you've met, and why? Or like what happened?
Well, it started off with being a part of the membership there, and every time I would go to the Hall of Fame, I would meet someone new there, mostly at the Hall of Fame, but now it's the entire town, and you start seeing the same people, you start talking and creating friendships. Well, over the years, things have changed where, I support the Hall of Fame, which you're going to find out very soon.
Next Saturday, we're meeting. My son and I are going to meet you and your son. I'm very excited.
And we're going to talk more about that. And I hope we could talk more about that in the future on a show. But it's something I want you to experience, because I like sharing what I get to experience. And like I said before, I love history. And so my growing relationships have allowed me to meet players down there, not just meet them, but have dinner with them, have breakfast, go out golfing with these guys, turn double plays with them, which is something that is amazing in itself. And I would have to say probably my favorite of all time was Buck O'Neill. He was just an incredible guy. Loved the game, and he could just talk forever about stories, both with himself and teams and players and cities and experiences. And that was just one happy guy. And I wish he could have gotten into the Hall before he passed, but he's probably my favorite of all time, but it wasn't a close relationship, but just having spent many times with him. But really Raleigh Fingers is my favorite, just because we bonded very fast. And his significant other grew an attachment to me and my son, to the point where she doesn't have kids and wanted to adopt my son. So she now has an adoptive grandson, and so it's great. And that has provided me with a lot of experiences. Raleigh has offered me a lot of items from his collection, which, I've grown to love, and certainly wish I could buy it all, but I can't. He's really amazing, and I stay in touch with him on a regular basis. He's had a rough couple years here with some surgeries and injuries, but it's something that I hope to share with you next weekend and talk more about that, and maybe have you kind of step into a similar role, so you can start meeting some of these guys and have Crosby start to experience some of this stuff, because it's really something that Ryan, my son, didn't have a whole lot of interest in at first, but once he's doing it, he absolutely loves it. And it's these guys really, most of these Hall of Famers, you see them in a different light when they're not in a crowd, when they're one-on-one with you. They're really just normal people, and they love life. They love baseball. So it's really a great thing, and a great experience.
We are going to have you back on a future episode. You might be the only guest we're going to have on twice, Todd. So I'm going to try to limit the amount of questions I have, because I'll keep you on another hour or so, and they're going to yell at me in here for the studio. Right. So one of the things I wanted to ask, and I wouldn't be doing a good job for one of my companies named Vintage Breaks if I didn't, but I know you've now been part of our community for a few years, and I'm certainly aware that you have a variety of collecting desires, and you very well may even break with other breakers. And so all I wanted to ask is, why Vintage Breaks, and why do you enjoy being part of our community and breaking with us?
Well, yeah, and I still do break with other people, just because, again, I'm trying to limit what I get. So you guys certainly supply me with a lot of the vintage part of that, which is what I prefer. But being a Yankee fan, I try to just collect Yankees now for the modern stuff. So I get into team only breaks where I know I'm going to get the Yankees. So that works out great by going over there. But the majority of my money is spent with you, of course. So I'm trying to get you closer to retirement too, with the way I'm spending with you.
Well, we appreciate that, and it's noted.
But it goes back to what your guys have. I don't know if they meant to really have it stick with me or not, but the comments are that Leighton doesn't like to leave anybody out. He likes everybody to walk away with something. And I think that's very, very important. And that's something, with me donating hundreds of thousands of cards over the years, that's what I want to do. And it's just like the Hall of Fame. I just want to share that. And the Hall of Fame knows that. That's why they open up their doors for what we're going to experience next weekend is I just happened to mention it to them that you were interested in coming. I had a friend that was interested in coming and bringing their son. And I said, oh, if you're going to have a tour, I was wondering if we can hop in. They're like, well, how many people are you talking about? And I said, oh, just, a couple of us. And like, no, well, you bring them in, and we're going to give you the tour. You don't deserve the public tour. You're going to get the really private tour. So I look forward to doing that with you and Crosby. And, I have another friend that's going to be coming that has not experienced a behind the scenes tour either. But, I hope to do that, and I like passing on and sharing what I get to experience, and that's something the Hall of Fame is really pushing to do these days. Is they just started last year a program to get more kids that from the inner city that don't even get out of their neighborhoods.
Yeah. No, listen, I think it's so wonderful. And what I'm thinking here is my gears and my wheels are spinning. Todd, there might be a way to work it out, because I was going to start asking more questions. I'm like, oh my goodness, they're going to kill me. What if potentially work it out where I can be up there the other time we're going to have you on, and instead of asking you about some of the wonderful things that are behind you and beyond in your collection, we actually do a live show and we tape it from, if you will, from your compound, we'll say, from the house. And I interview you about some of your favorite pieces. I think that could make a wonderful follow-up episode.
Yeah, we could maybe look at that. Again, I've told you about something that will be coming your way. And I actually hope to have some pictures next week. I spoke with my aunt. So I'm going to be stopping over there next week to do some pictures and a quick inventory to present to you with a collection. So I really think you're going to need to come see that collection.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it.
Maybe we can kill two birds with one stone on that.
Yeah. No, listen, I appreciate all of it, Todd. And most of all, I feel like today, we've got to know each other pretty well, but today you really shared a slice of your life with me. And to be fair with us, the community who might be watching this either now or in the future. So thank you from the bottom of my heart, from the bottom of the Vintage Breaks community here. And I know in about a week's time, Crosby and I are going to be up there engulfed in Cooperstown and going on a really fun tour with you. We're going to share some of those pics on social. And I don't know if you realize this, Todd, but now that the cat's out of the bag of the trade, I am going to post the pictures from the National, some of the, basically pics from our trade. And so I'm going to put it up on Instagram. So I'll share that with you when I do. Really looking forward to seeing you, your son Ryan, and meeting your friends. And of course, bringing my son Crosby next weekend. Todd, thank you so much for being on today.
Thank you. We'll see you next week.
Sounds great.
All right. Thanks.
All right, gang. I hope you enjoyed that interview with Todd. He has an incredible collection, but he's even more of an incredible person. And so I know that I'm really looking forward to spending some time with him and my son in Cooperstown next weekend. If you enjoyed this content and this video, please subscribe to my Just Collect YouTube channel. So that way, each and every time hobby content like this drops so that you can enjoy it in the future. Thanks for stopping by.